Welcome to Start With a Win, where we give you the tools and lessons you need to create business and personal success. Are you ready? Let's do this.
Coming to you from Denver, Colorado, home of RE/MAX World Headquarters. It's Adam Contos, CEO of RE/MAX with Start With a Win. Was that like the air robot dance?
Yeah,
somewhere?
it was like the air robot / shoulder popping. Like, if I was in MMA, I could be like knocking fools out my shoulders.
Whoa. With the robot moves in the ring. Crazy.
Right.
As an avid MMA devotee, I can tell you that has only ever happened once in the cage.
Okay.
I
No
don't
knocking
know
out.
that you would be the one that would be able to pull that one off. I'm just
Okay.
saying.
All right. I got it.
This is his dream, David. I mean, it's, Mark he's got that on his dream board to do the robot in the MMA ring. So.
Yeah, that's right. And knock somebody out with my shoulder.
So, all right. So, Mark, we're going to dive into this. Okay.
Oh, we got my buddy David on the podcast today, which is great.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, can I introduce him? I want to.
Please do. Tell the world who he is and why
right.
they should continue to listen to this podcast.
Well, this is an exciting show because we're going to have a lot of fun talking. We've got David Burkus on today, keynote speaker, organizational psychologist, really one of the world's leading business thinkers. That right there says a lot. David's forward-thinking ideas and best-selling books are changing how companies approach innovation, collaboration, and productivity. His insights on leadership and teamwork have been featured in all the big media outlets like Wall Street Journal, Harvard Business Review, USA Today. I mean, if you can think of it, he's probably been on there. And David is also a former associate professor of leadership and innovation at Oral Roberts University. David's actually been ranked as one of the world's top business thought leaders by Thinker 50. So, David, glad to have you on the show. Great to see you today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. You're about to say, if you can think of it, I've been on it. I have not been on Start With a Win. So
Whoa.
we're checking that box today.
There you go. Hey, let's dig into things here. I think it's safe to say that over the past, call it year and a half or so, things have been changing a little bit, right? With working remotely, hybrid structure, things like that. All that's kind of a new workplace norm. And being the organizational psychologist that you are, there's a lot going on in your world that you are consulting a lot of businesses on. So how do you think this workplace structure will continue to evolve?
The interesting thing, so I come at this, I've been studying organizations that run things a little bit differently, teams and whole companies that are fully distributed or just have alternative workplace practices. Before the pandemic, my primary thing that I tried to do was sort out, were these fads or did these represent kind of the future of work and where we're headed? And when you look at remote work specifically, it was sort of always a 2 steps forward, 1 step back relationship between work and remote work. You would see a company announce it, and then you'd see a different one scale back, right? So there was always this. We had maybe in the United States, maybe about 6 to 10% of the workforce saying they've worked primarily remotely. And then, of course, on March 15th, give or take a day, it switched to the best estimates I saw were close to 45% of the American workforce working remotely. So basically everyone other than essential workers. But for a lot of people, this was brand new. And we had some growing pains. We had a whole lot of burnout. But gradually people started to rebuild a work schedule and a life that really worked for them. And I think that's where we are now. You're seeing a lot of people report they don't want to come back to the office, or they don't want to come back to the office all of the time. And right now is actually a really bad time to be looking for data on this. So I actually have been going back to some of the data pre-pandemic. And the one I find most interesting is there was a Gallup State of the Workplace survey in February 2020. So COVID was around, but it wasn't really in the United States. And what they found was that the most engaged employees reported being out of the office 2 to 3 days per week. So if I had to make a guess, like when life settles down, when we're not doing this out of fear of a virus, when our kids are back in school, if we have school age kids, I would guess that's where most workplaces are going to go to. A level of flexibility proven by the pandemic that we can sustain, but a level of flexibility that allows for maybe 2 to 3 days a week. That would be where I would like the peg that I would hang my hat on, 2 to 3 days per week flexibility, which means most teams are going to be acting remote to at least some of their team members much more often than before the pandemic.
This is like the ultimate flexibility. No supervisor wants to wake up in the morning and have their employees start going, hey, I can't come in today, because you've got, like, your life starts falling apart as a supervisor. You're like, how do I run this business? How do leaders improve themselves, to obviously build this trust, have the transparency with their employees, have the communication with their employees, which thank God that's coming back. But how do we deal with that as leaders?
Yeah, so a couple things to think about first, right? Which is on the policy level, this is where I think pushing the decision around how flexible down to the team level is probably the best, right? If you just say, okay, our remote work, our flexible work policy is you can spend 2 days working remotely per week. You tell your boss what they are. That's a recipe for disaster, right? At the same level, just letting people say, hey, you decide. Well, we have no percentage of time, right? Because what you end up with is either one of two things. You'll either end up with all of the middle managers and senior leaders being at the office all of the time, which sends the message that if you want to be promoted, you're at the office all of the time. And 2 years from now, we're right back to where we were, right? Or you take it really, really seriously, but there's no communication. I think the best thing to do is from a corporate level, set some guide rails based on our surveys, based on what we think is appropriate. Here's like the guide rails: no more than 3 days a week or no more than 2 days a week. But on a team level, you should decide, because some teams are going to want to do, okay, let's do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or let's do Monday through Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays, work from home, or let's do hours, right? Some teams are going to want to say, let's come to the office from 10 to 2, but then we don't care if you stay later or show up earlier. We just know if we need to call a meeting, we do it from 10 to 2. That tends to work way better on the team level for most organizations than it does organization-wide, right? So that's number one, I think. And then the other element as an individual team leader, how do you do that? You mentioned how do you build trust, communication, et cetera. This is where culture really comes into play. And I think the thing that's been vividly apparent over the last 18 months has been that if you're not intentional about your culture, it breaks apart. For most organizations, culture is like, oh, it's the way we do things around here. And it was just totally accidental, right? But I've actually never worked with an organization, never studied an organization or written about an organization that is renowned for their great culture, where it wasn't an intentional decision. In fact, most of them have the same elements. They use different terms and different core values, but they have those sort of same fundamental elements. And that's where it's going to take. So culture means everything large and small, from what are our core values, et cetera, to what are the guidelines for our communication that are going to determine how do we communicate when we're in the office, out of the office, et cetera, and how do we keep that sense of connection, especially if we're allowing flexibility between how much time people are remote. If we end up leading a team where some people are at the office all of the time and some people are barely there, then being intentional about making touch points for both scenarios is going to matter. We can't just go back to a world where you rely on, our in-person interactions, the cake in the break room every birthday is our company culture. We can't rely on that. I mean, it didn't work before, but it definitely doesn't work now. But fundamentally, remote and hybrid teams that have strong company cultures are marked by really three things. They're marked by a sense of shared understanding, shared identity, and psychological safety. I'll give you like the 2-sentence definition of each. But shared understanding is how much people on a team understand roles and responsibilities, knowledge, skills, so the clarity piece, but also the soft stuff. They know what a request for help from other members of the team looks like and what is just a venting session, right? They know how to give feedback in a way that's productive and tasks focused and not have it be personal, because they know that the other people on the team. Shared identity is how much I feel like I actually draw my identity from the team, feel like a member of the team. I'm really worried about this in 2021 and beyond, because I think there's going to be a tendency to have kind of the co-locateds, the people who come back to the office a lot, feel like one team, and the remoters, the hybrid, feel sort of like outsiders. So how do we bring people back in to make sure everybody feels like a member of the team, everybody knows they're making a contribution, et cetera? And then psychological safety actually has nothing to do with remote specifically. That's a fundamental element of any thriving team, is do people feel safe to take risks, to express themselves, most importantly to speak up. This is maybe specific to remote, because it's a whole lot harder to speak up and disagree with your team when there's emails, reply alls flying, and everybody's got consensus, and you're the one person that's like, well, hang on, this might not actually be a good idea, right? We want to be cultivating that and make sure that we're really conscious as leaders, especially when we're doing virtual meetings or in asynchronous communication, that we're actively calling out for people who disagree with us, because those are not mediums compared to in-person meetings or being able to pull somebody to the side in the hallway. These are not mediums that facilitate dissent to the level that they should. So we want to make sure that we're actively calling for that so people feel safe to actually express themselves.
David, your most recent book, Leading from Anywhere, The Essential Guide to Managing Remote Teams. Sounds like a need for leadership right there. So, tell us about this. What, a flyover, a couple key points that are in there that people can look forward to when they pick up the book.
I'll boil it down to one, just for those of you that are like me, riddled with ADHD and would get super bored. And that one is that we saw the primary difference between leaders and managers, I think, over the last 18 months, is that managers had in their mind that presence equaled productivity. For lack of a better option, I can see you, therefore I know you're working. And that was destroyed, right? When the great work from home experiment. The leaders who led from a place of productivity is separate from presence. I trust you to do your work, and I see my job as figuring out what things are blocking you from making progress in the tasks that you've been assigned, and my job is to help you remove them. They honestly manage this transition pretty well. It's the ones that really struggle with that. My job is to monitor the work that you're doing, to make sure that you're doing what we assign to you. And the easiest way to do that is to make sure you're here all of the time. Presence never actually, well, I guess in a factory situation, you could probably rely on presence equaling productivity, but it never really did. And if you're still operating from that mindset, to be honest with you, this book has nothing to help you, right? But if you recognize that it doesn't, right, and that you need to trust your people to do their work, and that your job is to support them, your job is to make sure they do their best work ever.
David, I have a question that we ask all of our guests on the show, and I'm sure you have a great answer to this. How do you start your day with a win?
So we have a morning PT session for me and my boys whenever it's a school day, which is 10 push-ups, 20 sit-ups, 30 air squats every single morning. And we do it for that exact reason. We do it to start with a little micro win. Yeah, it gets the blood pumping, you get a little bit of exercise, etc. But it's much more about like, boom, checked that off, right? I don't really like making my bed, so I never really agreed with Admiral William McRaven and that whole thing. But I'll do 10, 20, 30 pretty much any day to know, boom, I've checked it off. And if nothing else happens today, I got a little mini win right there.
I love it. I'm a big fan of the exercise first thing in the morning. I do make my bed, by the way, David. But so anyhow, David Burkus, author, speaker, influencer, thought leader, I mean, just organizational expert. Thank you for being on Start With a Win. We appreciate all that you do to help our workplaces be a better place for everyone. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Hey, and thank you so much for listening to Start With a Win. If you'd like to ask Adam a question or tell us your Start With a Win story, give us a call, leave us a message at 888-581-4430. And until next time, Start With a Win. All right, here we are on YouTube.
Hello, YouTubers.
That's right, for everyone who's stuck around to see David's shirt.
Yeah. I can show you the back now if you really want. It does say people work with you.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
There you go.
David, what was your first job?
My first job actually was, I didn't have the same job for 6 years, but my first job when I was 14 years old, I walked into a supermarket and got a job as a bag boy, sacked groceries for this little local grocery store in Massachusetts. When I was 16, they let me handle money, so I became a cashier. When I was 18, which was most of my senior year, I was an assistant front-end manager, so my job was basically to manage all the other teenagers. And then actually every summer when I was in college, I'd email them around spring break. But I would say, here's the day I'm coming back for the summer, any opportunities you got. And every single year, they found me something. So I did all sorts of stuff for them, from working in the butcher shop one year to being like the night restocker person. But yeah, I worked from 16 years old to probably 22.
Wow.
At Market Basket in Westford, Massachusetts. Just through lots of different jobs, but same company the whole time.
That's cool, man. That's really cool. And then you went on to get your degrees and, all
Yeah,
that kind of
I didn't
stuff.
come back after graduating college because that's the whole point.
Yeah. You're like, what do you have in upper management here?
Well, I will tell you, especially working summers with some of the guys that did high school only and didn't go to college was great motivation.
Like, you know what?
To stay studying. Not to say I'm better than them or whatever, but I was just kind of like, I did the
What kind of
math.
life do I want?
Right, exactly. You got a great salary for a 19-year-old, but it's never going to go up. So,
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, man, thanks for being on Start With a Win. You guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us. If you like this episode, make sure to hit that thumbs up icon. It'll show it to more people. Obviously, subscribe so you get notified whenever we release new episodes, and you get notified by hitting that little bell icon. So make sure to do that. And until next time, we'll see you when we see you.